Nobody's Business, a podcast for all those subjects we've been trained to avoid. Here's your respectfully irreverent host, Keith Shelton.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So glad all you nobodies could join us tonight. I'm Keith Shelton. I'm the ramrod of this outfit. And normally, I'm joined by my co-pilot, my co-star, my cohort in crime, my son, JT. There he is.
Hey, man.
Hey, buddy.
I'm glad to be back. I haven't been back in a while.
Well, glad you're with us, and glad we're back. We had to miss last week, if you remember. It was one of those perfect storms of being pulled in about 80 different directions, and we just could not pull it off. And one of our favorite guests is back, and we're going to, probably the most critical, most important election is right around the corner. That I know that I believe in my lifetime, and we have. I think it's just me. I think we have one chance to get it right.
I voted today. I didn't do a Facebook post with my sticker or anything like that, but I did vote today, so I just didn't publicly announce it.
Okay. Well, me and your mama voted Tuesday, just to make sure, will my one vote count as one vote, or, by the time the Democrats get through with all their shenanigans, is it going to be, 1/10 of a vote? I don't know.
Well, Daryl and Arnell just had to sign X's and O's because they can't read or write. So. They're dead too.
That's right. Well, look, one of the reasons that this upcoming election is so important is because of the issues that are facing the everyday, middle America, mid-America, and I say mid-America with all sincerity. I'm talking about flyover country, not left coast, not least coast. I'm talking about those out there who are making things happen that are, the productive segment of our society. We got challenges. We've had challenges. It's, you had 4 good years, and I don't care who wants to disagree with me. 4 good years, and then you had the third. The third term of the Obama administration, and I hate to see where we would end up if the election does not go like it needs to for our sake of democracy, our sake of freedom, our Bill of Rights. Boy, if George Orwell could not have known how right he was when he wrote what he did. What was the name of his book, JT? 1984, George Orwell.
I haven't read that one. I think I see our guest in the background confirming, yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay. Well, tonight we're going to be tackling a topic that's been on everybody's mind. It's talked about TV shows, social media, podcast, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. It's just the theme of our discussion tonight is going to be inflation. Yes, that's true, but we're going to talk about several elements around that. And I am very glad to bring back one of the smartest people I know, a good friend of ours. And, we're bringing him back so he can give you some really good insight into what's going on, what has gone on, what may be around the corner for us. He's an expert in the financial field. He's a guy who truly understands economic shifts, trends, that sort of thing, and especially how it hits everyday people. Why? Because he's one of us. All right. You know him already, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome Jake Mahan to our show tonight, folks. Hey, Jake.
Hey, good
Long time
evening,
no
fellas.
see.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate you guys having me back. I hope you guys got JT's high school English teacher as a subscriber as well, so we can educate him on George Orwell in 1984, a book about the dystopian future and how it impacted society. So
I made
happy
a
to be here.
I made a mistake when I was in my senior year. I did, advanced classes all the way through, and then senior year I was like, I don't want to do all this anymore. And I went to the regular class, and I was so bored out of my mind.
Well, I know you, JT, and I know your interests, and I genuinely think you'd enjoy the book. So you're going to have to pick that one up. It seems like sci-fi, but as Keith alluded to, it appears to be nonfiction, just written in the past.
Well, for those of us who have lived through 1984 and we're now in the present, hell, it's almost like a how-to manual for the Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, really, goodness. Well, Jake, let's talk about. Let's just start off with one of the realities. In September, I believe it was, the Federal Reserve, put upon us a half point, in the vernacular, it would be a 50 basis point federal interest rate reduction. And they said the reasons are we believe we got inflation under control, and it's time, and 50 basis points is equal to, for those who just everybody like the rest of us, it's a half a point of interest. Let's say 6 went to 5.5. Financial people would say 50 basis points. You and I would say it dropped to half a percent. So anyway, now that people know what we're talking about, Jake, was that right?
Well, it's certainly what they did. And of course, kind of even at the beginning of the year, looking forward to what we knew was coming in November, um, not surprised that there was a reduction in interest rate via policy coming up close to the election. And, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be politically agnostic, but every president on each side, we know in reality does have influence over decisions there, both how they communicate with them publicly and how they describe how they want policy to move. And it would be the opinion of lots of people that the move was made when it was, in an effort to show some evidence to the voting populace that look how good the economy is. Look, interest rates are coming down, the economy's booming, things are going great. And I think the best course where we want rates to go over the next near term to intermediate future is down, and I think that's a good thing. But we want them to go down because inflation, the fight on inflation has been successful, and the question today is, do we feel like we've won that battle on inflation, or was this move more political than it was monetary policy? So Keith, I'm sure you have some thoughts for me on whether you think that battle's been won or not to this point.
Jake, I am not at a loss for opinions. No, I am not.
He's passionate. So. He's passionate about it.
Listen, guys, I'm just here to be the facilitator. I'm like Magic Johnson, John Stockton. I'm play point guard and just throw assists to Keith here, and I'll just be happy to play off of that.
Well, here's the thing. When Biden got into office, he implemented so many policies that were absolutely immediate inflation generators. Okay. Now, knowing that he was causing inflation, they intentionally held off raising interest rates to cool it off, because that's what you do when you got fast moving inflation. You raise interest rates to try to cool the economy. What you want is something more. Let me see if I can get my hand. You want something that's like this. Okay. Am I right, Jake?
Yes, sir.
That's the preferred way you want to see things. But they held off raising interest rates at all simply because, when you take the rising interest rates and add them to the policies, that Biden was putting in place that was making the cost of everything go up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Well, they held off raising the rates for way too long. And then when they finally started raising the rates, which, you know, you talk to 100 people, 95 of them would have said, okay, they did what they did, but they should have started, you know, much earlier, and they may not have had to have raised rates as high as they did. And what they did, excuse me, what they did by holding off so long, then they had such high, to reach the height of interest rates they needed, they were making increases in such a short time span. Well, what in the heck did that do?
Yeah, rampant inflation, obviously. You know, and I think I may have used this analogy here in the past, and I use it frequently with other people, and I continue to do so because that's what I hear people repeat back to me. So I think it resonates. But think about the management of interest rates from a policy perspective as a gas pedal and a brake pedal. So you lower rates, you're stepping on the gas. You raise rates, you're stepping on the brakes, right? And so as we ran through COVID and all that stimulus money, basically nobody did anything until inflation was running rampant. And so what we were doing is, rather than hitting the brakes before we went off the cliff, we hit the cliff going 100 miles an hour, and as we're free falling in the air, we're slamming on the brakes and wondering why nothing's stopping.
Exactly.
It was too little, too late, which does lead to, well, you got to leave it up higher for a longer period of time. You know, we've had
painful. Yes.
And it's one thing to do, you know, painful things for a short period of time, but we've been in this extended period of high rates because inflation is so stubborn, based on, for one, how much money we pumped into the economy. Well, and I'll say this too. We talked about maybe some political motivations to the most recent policy change on rates. The other thing you've seen in the last 30 days or so, which would be subsequent to the last interest rate decrease or the most recent interest rate decrease, is we all talk about the federal debt and what an astronomical number that is, you know, $36 trillion. Well, they've actually accelerated the rate in which we're borrowing money, which is injecting money into the economy in the last 30 days at a greater pace than we have ever. I mean, they've just taken on double the debt in the last month that they've been doing the month before in an effort once again to show how rosy the economy is. Anytime you pump money in the economy, what does it do? It helps hit the gas again. And so here we are coming up on an election. You got a policy that, a party that's currently in office now taking on additional debt, which what do we talk about? That just makes that inflation even more stubborn. So we're sitting here talking about how we fight inflation, but for political motivations, we're pumping exponentially more debt than we have in the past in the last 30 days just to continue to put forward a false rhetoric, false narrative for how well the economy's doing in an effort to turn a tide of an election that's going one party's way, it appears today, and not the others.
Yeah. Well, Jake, excuse me. Let's talk some fundamentals. Take our nation's debt. When interest rates are low, it doesn't take quite as much money to service the nation's debt. Do we agree on that?
Right.
But when interest rates start rising, which they did prior to this most recent decrease, and they were rising in such large increments in such a short period of time, okay, what does that do to how much it costs to service the debt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's exponentially risen. You know, I saw a figure the other day, and I saw it in a couple different places that basically what it would cost just to service the interest on our national debts, like $3,300 an American citizen a month. And so I don't know about you guys, that sounds a lot like a mortgage payment or significantly more than one for most Americans. And that's kind of what it would take to just service just the interest. I'm not talking about reducing the overall balance, just to service the interest on the national debt. $3,300 for every American citizen to do so.
Well, Jake, that's what people don't understand. When you have high inflation, it's not just a case of you feel it at the grocery store. You don't just feel it at the gas pump. You don't just feel it at when you go to buy basic needs for people like blue jeans and shoes and you need a new washer or dryer. You're not just feeling it there. Our debt just explodes because in order for our government to sell the debt instruments, they have to attach higher interest rate premiums on what they're going to pay on those instruments just to get them sold.
Sure.
Am I right?
Absolutely. And we can really get into this and say who are our lenders, because you got a couple options when you've got this issue. If you're even if you're a person, you got about two options when you're not cash flowing because you got unmanageable debt payments. And one is negotiate with your lender. Well, who's our lender? I mean, it's China. I mean, it's other nations. How favorable do you think they're going to be to us telling them we can't afford the payments on this, right?
Jake, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about this the last time you were on, of how China basically made its money available to many countries around the world, and they didn't put them into things where they were helping these other countries improve their GDP so they could easily pay the money back. Okay. So when the money was freely given, but then the time came to call the note, they couldn't pay it. So China has, free reign of brand new airports. China has free reign of brand new seaports in these countries around the world. And they did it completely legitimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really probably their primary preferred outcome in making those transactions was not even for the cash flow or the repayment of the debt. It was exactly what you said, to then basically be able to foreclose or own the asset that was held as collateral.
And that gives them toeholds around the world in places that they wouldn't have them otherwise. Okay, well, that's one subject.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this. JT puts up the best videos. Let's talk about this. And I mean, it's like every other day, somebody will post something on Facebook. I don't know how to do Twitter. I don't know how to do, MySpace or none of that junk. I barely function on Facebook. But somebody will post something that says, hey, I found my grocery order, or a particular grocery order. It had 30 items in it from 4 years ago, and it was at Walmart, it was HEB, or it was, one of these other brand name grocery store chains. And 30 items cost $100. And when they reordered the same 30 items today, it didn't cost $100. It cost over $200. That is greater than 100% rate of inflation, Jake, in 4 years' time. Now, that's groceries. What about gas? Who needs to see the photographs? I mean, they're all over, Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and all over. What the gas prices were in the fall of 2000 when the last election was held, and what are gas prices now? And you and I've talked about this many times, Jake. We used to be, under the Trump administration, we were a net petroleum exporter, not only of petroleum, but we were also exporters of the finished product, refined gasoline, natural gas. Well, because of the policies that the Democrats put in place immediately after Biden gets in, well, that switches. So there's so much less being produced in the world, and what is being produced, may not be being produced by the people with the finest of character and goodwill toward the Western countries. It doesn't make sense that the price of gas in the last 3 months has gone down. Now, certainly it hadn't gone down to the level of 4 years ago, but it has gone down. My take is that's just as political as the interest rate, half cut in interest rate.
Yeah.
Because like I said, to the average American trying to buy blue jeans or dresses or skirts or gym shorts and tennis shoes to send their kids to school, they're not seeing 5% inflation. They're seeing 25% inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
go ahead.
No.
Well, you see you see the point I'm raising. So now give us your thought on it.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting too about that, Keith, and so I can make this not political, okay? Because what you could, I mean, and not, I mean, political is a big part of this, but I'm saying even if you, despite whatever your political beliefs are, let me say this. So the Fed or the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, they release data. You can go pull it straight from the Fed. So, and what I say is not political. It's that data is not political. It's the legitimate raw data, economic data that they get comes straight from the Fed. So they have no political biases or leanings, supposedly. But it's their data, and they put out data showing that inflation is not down. In fact, it continues to go up. But what's interesting is the same organizations or the same entities that are released that have this data. You can go pull it on the Fed website. You can go pull all this data. What they tell the public flies directly in the face of what their own data says. You just got to know where to look. And so it's one of those things you can't take their word for it with what they're telling you, because if you go pull the data from the same source, they'll prove up that what they're telling you and what their data says are not aligned. And so it's crazy to me that that doesn't get more media attention, because people that write at the Wall Street Journal or what New York Times or whatever it is, there's a lot of really smart people supposedly that work at those places that know how to look at that data, read that data. I'm just some podunk redneck over here in West Texas. I can go pull that stuff and look at it and go, what you guys are telling me isn't supported by the data I'm getting from you. So what's going on with that? It's just it's really interesting scenario we're in. You get into the fake news and all that kind of stuff, and you want to be able to trust some of these sources that you hope have your best interests at heart. But it's there's
Jake,
obviously some things going on behind the curtain that we don't know, or it's not known to enough people.
Well, don't get me started on that. I mean, the fallacy. When they finally had to correct the jobs numbers. Remember that? Just a few months, well, maybe 30 days ago, 45 days ago? They had to announce that they were so wrong on the jobs numbers. The correction on the jobs numbers was like 900,000 jobs in error.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you weren't in error. You knew all along. You fudged the numbers, and you gave the numbers you wanted the media to put out, and your media lapdogs did exactly what you wanted them to do. But you could only carry that fiction for so far. I mean, that's just like, like I was telling about the lady who posted the thing about her groceries. How are you going to lie to her? How are you going to tell her, she shouldn't have any trouble feeding her kids, trying to have dinner for her family. How are you going to tell her life is wonderful? Keep voting Democrat. We're doing so good for you. That woman's not going to be bamboozled. It doesn't matter what you say. She knows what she's paying at the grocery store. Mr. Plumbing contractor, he knows how much diesel costs. He's putting in his trucks to run up and down the road so that his guys can get to a job. He knows what that's costing now as opposed to 4 years ago. How are you going to lie to him?
Yeah. The term you may see on all these MySpaces and Facebooks and all that stuff, Keith, is gaslighting, right? That's the new term you hear in the last couple of years. Well, we're being gaslit by our own government on what inflation is. It's like, don't look at what's happening, just what we tell you, right?
All right. Well, look, Jake, we don't want to take the whole time. Yeah, that's what. Boy, isn't that a good view there? If anybody has to wonder, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. All right. Well, let's go back to what we started with, Jake, the Fed rate. All right. They dropped it 0.5 point. And I contend it was political because the economic measurements did not warrant a 0.5 point drop. Now, I'm glad it did. We're in the development business. You know, to try to keep the things moving in the stream of commerce, especially in commercial real estate development, we have to borrow money. And what you want to do is borrow as little as you can. Cash is king. If you've got cash, boy, you are way better off than if you are trying to develop and you're always at the margin. If you're at the margin, 1/10 of a point can put you out of business. I'm talking about 1/10 of a point going the wrong way can put you out of business. So cash is king. Let's agree on that, Jake. Jake, am I telling it right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, but still, it's driven by, you still have to borrow some money. You don't do multi-million-dollar projects out of your pocket change. We agree on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here you are out there, a 0.5 point drop in one fell swoop that freed up a lot of projects that had either been put on hold, suspended altogether, or declined because the developer couldn't get the rent rates from their national tenants that they like to build for. And so projects get killed, or they get held up, or they don't get approved at the real estate committee at all, right?
Correct.
So what did 0.5 point do for us if we're in the commercial real estate business?
Well, it's to your point, Keith.
Well, Jake, here's what I'm trying to say, Jake. Thank you. I'm glad for it. I'm glad we got it. But go ahead.
Yeah, and to your point, I'd love for rates. And here's the deal: we don't need rates to be near zero again, like they were, a few years ago pre-COVID. But we definitely need a healthy economy. I don't think anybody would argue rates need to be lower than they are. What the issue is, and I try to listen to lots of different opinions, and you can hear people argue for both sides on any issue. So I try to keep an open mind, listen to lots of different opinions, and then come to my own conclusion, right? And the 0.5 point, if it's legitimately applied based on economic conditions, that's great. I want rates to be 200 basis points lower than they are today. But what's scary is if it was politically motivated and not based on true data. What you could see is based on, and of course the result of the election is going to make a difference on what happens, but is this little short-term blip that's motivated for not the correct reasons. And I heard a very compelling case recently that if things don't fall right, we could see rates dramatically increase next year. I mean, and so you get a little 0.5 point reprieve here and think you're out of the woods. Well, you hadn't really fixed the root issue, and the only way to fix the root issue is how we got here to begin with. You got rampant inflation, you got to raise some rates. And so, if we're only halfway up to the top at this point, what does that do? And so we really got to get this fixed rather than just try to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and then have to come back and do some really serious increases again. And so while it's great, it's kind of like, yeah, it's you feel good about a little decrease on off the top, but you just hope that it's something that sticks and the economy can support, so we don't end up having some sort of crash. We keep hearing about how we're looking for a soft landing with rates and monetary policy. We still got a long way to go before I think anybody can claim victory on that.
Well, Jake, here's the thing. It's kind of like the gas prices. Yeah, gas has come down some, but nowhere near like it was 4 years ago. Okay, we got a 0.5 point drop. It did spur development. It did help. Banks started loaning again when they, you couldn't make deals work because their interest rate wanting to charge on construction money was so high. Okay. So yeah, thank you for the little bump, but let me put it this way. A developer, gets three new projects approved just since September because of that 0.5 point drop. Okay. He's going to hire plumbing contractors. He's going to hire electrical contractors. He's going to hire concrete contractors, dirt work people, Architects, engineers are going to get put back to work. But Jake, here's the reality. Those people who have a lot more confidence in their jobs, they're back working, 40-hour weeks, but they're still behind. They're still falling further and further behind because of what we said a while ago. Groceries have averaged 25% increases over 4 years. Gasoline was 60 or 70% increase over 4 years. So, okay, you got a half a point. Banks started loaning money again under terms that developers could work under. People are back at work. The number of projects that got kicked off, that blossomed, not exploded. I did not use the word exploded, but it did blossom. And people are working. But Jake, at the end of the week, they got less money than they had 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So did we actually help the everyday working American?
Right. And the answer, of course, is no. We still got more work to do. Yeah, you can decrease rates all you want, but until you get that inflation and prices down, yeah, you're not done. And so
people don't realize that. Yeah, I see this all the time on like Facebook threads where people are just like, "This is a landlord, market. They're gouging us for rent," and I'm like, well, first of all, you have no idea what went into that rent. You have no idea of the construction cost to build the building, the cost to buy the land, the interest paid on the land, the interest paid on the construction, the salaries paid for the people to work. And at the end of the day, you have a finished product for, let's say, $1 million. And now you've got to get a rent that you can cover your loan or your interest and your insurance and your general liability. And a lot of this is policy driven. It's all policy driven, really. People think that the landlord's just out here just bankrolling everybody, and they're out there getting scraps and getting screwed because of greedy landlords. And you and I face this every day when we're looking at budgets. Construction costs has not gone down at all.
no.
We're everything is more expensive these days. So it all is directly related to inflation. It's all directly related to the cost of items. It costs money to ship the goods here. We're doing a lot of shipping into America right now. We're not doing a whole. Our GDP is terrible. We are trucking that stuff across the country. The gas is high. If you got to get stuff shipped from California, good luck. I was looking at that gas chart a second ago, and just the price of fuel in California was like 10 times higher than everywhere else in the country. Everything costs money, and it's all directly related for policy.
Yeah, I can tie a couple of things y'all both said together. I've got a buddy that he works for a company that manages a very large multifamily real estate portfolio. And so, to your point on landlords, JT, he hears all the time about, well, all these greedy landlords, they're just gouging us because we can't buy a house, so they can charge whatever they want for rent. And he's going, he'll do exactly what Keith's talking about with the grocery receipts. He's like, this is what my costs were 5 years ago. This is what they are today. My insurance cost is double. My debt cost is triple. My taxes are double. I went up on you guys for, on rent by 12%. Well, my expenses went up 50%. So you guys act like I'm gouging you, and I'm barely breaking even. Whereas when I was charging you less rent 5 years ago, I was making money. And I'm just trying to keep the lights on, and I got to raise rents to this level just so I can continue to operate this property.
We're having to get creative right now with how we get loans because the debt coverage doesn't work. There's too much debt to cover the amount of payment on the loans, and people are just like, man, that rent's too high. It's like, well, I'm sorry, that's what it costs to do business right now. And there's businesses that are just stop putting the brakes on because of the issue at hand right here. And there's some businesses that are taking the opportunity to keep driving because we hope there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel that we can get through this, and we persevered through it. And that's all we can do right now.
Couldn't agree more.
I don't want the conversation to lag, but here's what I'm going to say, Jake. I don't know if you watched the episode recently that JT and I did. JT and I do it. I mean, we're very sporadically, but we hold what we call commercial real estate 101 as part of our Nobody's Business podcast. And it's just me and JT, and we're talking about, real estate, the various forms and things like that. And JT just raised a point. If the project, people are motivated by profit. Nobody took you to raise, nobody took me to raise. If you can't make a profit, what happens? They pull back, they hold on to what they have, and they start killing deals. They don't even offer deals. And it's like JT said, if you're trying to present a rent package, a lease package to Advance Auto or McCoy Building Supply or some of these other brand name stores that that's how they grow. They grow on that business model. And if the development cost, number one, the development costs are so high, and then you have to borrow some of the money to make the project work. Well, if the interest rate is so high, you have to lay out as here's the rent I need if you want this store in this location. And the deal gets turned down because they don't want to pay that rent. And, that's what I said, that 0.5 point interest rate drop helped a little, but it certainly hadn't fixed the problem. And it hadn't fixed the problem. That's what people don't understand. I mean, my gosh, the news of that 0.5 point drop, but it didn't fix the problem for the average American trying to buy groceries. That mother that's got 3 kids going to be sitting at her kitchen table that night, and her trying to feed them that night and the next night, and for the whole week, and husband's trying to get a fledgling business off the ground. He's not just paying more for rent. He's having when he goes and buys a pickup truck, interest rates are higher, that sort of thing. So there's so much that 0.5 point didn't fix. It didn't translate into relief, is what I'm trying to say. Even though in the business world, it made some difference, when it translates to the everyday American, it was a non-event to them.
Yeah, and it's even a limited impact in the business world. I mean, you're right. The deals that were right on the cusp get through, but when we're talking, really, what's going to help is when we're lowering rates because it's the right thing to do, and everyone's like, okay, we see the path forward to rates are going to continue to come down because the economy is healthy, right? Even in the commercial real estate world, we see the 0.5 point reduction, but all these investors for all of these national tenants, there's you probably, well, maybe you have it's been said for many years, the last few years here, there's trillions of dollars on the sidelines of money that would typically investors or private equity companies, whatever, would be using to purchase businesses, and they're not doing it because the rates are so high. It impacts their return on their investment, the yield. And so there's all this money sitting on the sidelines. Well, that 0.5% didn't all of a sudden make that $1 trillion get super excited to come out and go throw it around to all the nation. They're going, call me when it's 200 basis points, then we'll start throwing this money around. But we're going to wait.
Exactly.
They're not. Here's how you know that's the smartest money out there is those guys. And those guys didn't flip the switch on because they know it's not real what they're seeing. Like, okay, we see this 0.5 percentage point. We know that's not something we can count on going forward in the next 12 months. So we're going to go ahead and just continue to sit on this pile of cash. And it kills those guys to sit on cash. They make money by investing money. They don't make money sitting it and parking it in a bank account, checking account somewhere. And so that's a good indication right there of what the actual real smart money thinks about the economy and rates is, hey, we're not confident that this is going to stick or it's going to continue on this trajectory of downward interest rate policy. So we're going to sit on this and wait and see what shakes out.
Man, if you knew how loud Keith and I yelled today, we finally got a term sheet on a deal we've been working on for about a year now. We just yelled out, praise Jesus. Thank you, Lord. We finally got someone to give us, a term sheet that could help get our deal done. It's tough out there right now, man.
Yeah, well, JT's exactly right. I mean, tough may not be quite as tough, but it's still tough out there. I mean, a half a point when you're talking about what was the Fed, Jake, when they dropped it to half? It was over 5%, right?
5.5, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. 5.5 went to 5.
Right.
5 is still for the Fed rate is still horrendous because the banks don't charge borrowers 5%.
Right.
They borrow way above 5%, so that they can make money. So that half point didn't translate very well. And we had somebody just now comment the same thing, is it just didn't translate to mom and dad's kitchen table. It didn't translate to their, having to buy that washing machine that needed replacing, or adding that bedroom because they had another baby. It just didn't translate.
Yeah.
It just didn't translate. Well, here's something I'm going to say. Let's go back to COVID. And this is what nobody.
Let's not.
Well, okay, let me be more correct. Let's go back to the time period of COVID. This is what so many people have no idea. We who are in the business, oh my gosh, the results were just almost catastrophic. And like I said, if you were operating on margin, if you were operating with no room at all, COVID put you out of business. And I'm fixing to tell you, some of the things that we had to deal with. Okay. And we survived just because we're so lean and mean. Okay. But when you think about it, COVID hits, and I'm talking about full bore, and how much of that was political? Oh my God, don't even get me started. The 6 foot, the masking. But here's what people need to understand. They closed plants. They told workers they couldn't come back to work. So guess what? Construction products didn't get made. What'd that do to the cost of the construction products that were made? They went way up. They went way up. What about the cost of concrete? Concrete increased. The cost of concrete during COVID went up like 60%. Okay? Steel went up like 48 to 50%. I mean, construction materials, due to the government policies on COVID, it was unbelievable. Well, that alone shut down projects. I mean, there were projects that were half built that got boarded up because the banks wouldn't loan any more money on it because they couldn't handle it. Okay, Jake, speak up if I'm saying it wrong.
No, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
I saw this is a massive multifamily project in the Houston area somewhere, but they built that thing for like $300 million. I mean, it was some massive monstrosity of a deal. And then they wound up, 18 months later, like you said, basically interest rates just destroyed the viability of the project for what they spent on it. And the bank took over, sold that thing to somebody for $100 million. I mean, they spent 300 on it, and the bank got $100 million for it. I mean,
and Jake, that's the thing. COVID caused such unbelievable increases in the cost of construction materials and getting stuff built. And then when COVID was over and things started relaxing, do you think there was a 60% drop in cost?
Right. Never.
50 or 45 or 50% drop in the price of steel? No, that didn't happen. So the COVID increase in the cost of goods that are needed for construction, that was permanent. It was just a matter of where did it level off?
Yep.
Because it did not go back to pre-COVID levels. And so,
right.
Hey, if anybody was wondering, COVID's only about 5 years ago, people. And so when you look at what, the things that Biden put into place as soon as he got into office, there you go. Price of crude oil shot up. The supply of crude oil went down. Okay, what about Biden selling barrels of oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve just to try to moderate the price of crude oil, just so the numbers won't be worse than they really should be. Jake, I'm y'all gonna get me started. That's what's gonna happen.
You're just passionate.
It's just for sure. I mean, you're describing the issues that were put us where we are today, for sure.
Well, but let's go back to the real people, the people that matter. That's the typical American family trying to build, to enjoy their part in building their American dream. And it's like the government's doing everything they can to not let it happen.
No toilet paper. That's right, Don. That's the first thing that went out. Hurricane, no toilet paper. Inflation, no toilet paper. Election, no toilet paper.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Well, Jake, I keep going back to the American family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where do you see us? I know you didn't want to get political, but where do you see us after the election? Let's say the blue party wins. Where do you think inflation's going to go? How do you think it's going to the typical American family is going to fare after that?
Well, yeah, there's no, and of course, what happens for the American family is that it spirals, right? Because things start getting tight. You start, man, I'm carrying a little bit more balance in my credit card. Well, of course, rates are astronomical, so all of a sudden I'm paying way more interest on that credit card, and I'm paying more just to cover the interest to limp along than I'm used to, and so then that balance grows a little bit. Then I'll get past due in my car, go buy a new car, and it's triple the rate, right? And then all those things start to spiral, right? And so really, one way, I hope that, if we get, we get Trump in office, one of the most important issues to me, just because I have a finance background, is the finance implications. But we're already in the sunsetting phase of all the Trump tax cuts from 2017. We've already about halfway into the sunsetting of all those tax cuts. And you guys, if we get to the
2026, right?
That's right. And if we get to the end of that, you guys don't even want to know what kind of taxes we're all going to be paying. And that's everybody. That's not the rhetoric around that is the cuts are for the ultra rich or whatever. That's not the case. Any business owner that's creating something, creating jobs, they're selling stuff. The 170, the depreciation tax cuts, the 179 tax cuts, all of those things. They're going to child tax credits that got basically doubled under the Trump tax code. I mean, all that stuff's about to go away, and I'll be interested to see. I mean, if none of that's just renewed and we just let that run out, you want to talk about it's going to get a lot worse for the regular old American family, and the worst part about that is where it's going is to the government, and of course, what do you do? Well, you sure don't want people then turning to the government because, well, now I'm out of money because of taxes, so I'm going to, get on, go look for sources of revenue for my household from the government, and it becomes a cycle of just downward trajectory for, financial prosperity.
Well, and that's just it. Prosperity would be a dirty word. Everybody, the scheme would be to try to get as many people, unless you're a member of the Communist Party, then it's laissez-faire. It's
right.
Caviar and Mercedes for everybody to drive if you're a member of the Communist Party. But for all of us, who make up the cannon fodder and class, we should be thankful. We take our government dole and be glad about it. Kiss the hand when you pick up your government paycheck, and kiss the ring before you leave the building. And we need to be glad about that. That's what communism wants you to be.
Mm-hmm.
The prosperity, working hard and profit and trying to make something of yourself, trying to make a future for your family. I mean, I read an article yesterday or day before about the blue tickets plan for estate taxes. Commonly some people call it the death tax. I mean, it's just like you said, the Trump tax cut right now is $12.5 million for an individual, roughly $25 million for a family. Okay. I believe by the end of 2025, that's going to be cut in half simply because, like you said, the Trump tax cuts are going to sunset, and that higher limit is going to expire. Well, that means it's going to revert to 6 million and 12.5 million. Well, the blue party wants to eliminate a whole bunch of deductions that you could try to use and lower the actual threshold at which taxes start having to be paid to something like I don't know what it was, 5 million for a family. Well, Jake, if you started a plumbing contractor business when you were in your 20s and your wife did the books at night after y'all put the kids to bed, and you're working 8 and 10 12-hour days and mom's doing the books, well, that's when you started, and there you are by the time you're 50, 55, getting ready to retire. You wake up and you've got a business that's worth well in advance of what she wants to be the threshold amount to have to pay taxes. And how are you going to pass that business to your son or your daughter when you have to sell the business just to pay the taxes?
You can get me started on this because it's an absolute joke. And that you're right, Keith. What's really sad is that could eliminate a lot of family generational businesses, because to your point, the only way to pay the estate tax on it is to sell the business. And there's been lots of people in all kinds of different industries that have been put in that exact situation, and they've had to basically against their will go and try to unload this successful business that's multiple generations old. Because they can't afford the taxes.
Hey, Jake, make everybody happy and feeling real good about how hard they've been working, and tell them how long a period of time do they have to sell that business to raise the money to pay those taxes?
I don't know the exact period of time, Keith. Tell me.
How about 9 months?
I mean, you can't do a business transaction that quickly. It's here. I got a great real world analogy for you that you've probably seen the headlines and didn't know that this was the main factor at play. So, and this is not going to be an everyday American, but it's this. This is a good illustration of what it is. So Mark Davis owns the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Raiders have been in that Davis family. Al Davis, everybody probably knows from back in the day.
Oh, the world famous Al Davis.
Al Davis. So Mark Davis owns that, and his mom, which Al's wife, and you guys probably saw in the news last week. Tom Brady became a minority owner of the Raiders, along with one of Tom Brady's business partners and another person. So they own like 10%, and then this other guy got some too. So I think 15% of the Raiders, the football team, not in the NFL. Right. Well, everyone's going, well, that's crazy. Well, why wonder why Mark Davis is giving away that kind of chunk of the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's nice of them to let Tom Brady in. What's going on there is Mark Davis's mom, when she dies, the guy that owns the Las Vegas Raiders can't afford the estate tax on the Las Vegas Raiders. So he's having to sell chunks of the team right now just to put cash in the bank so he can pay the estate tax when his mom dies. And he does, because right now, if his mom died today, Mark Davis would have to sell an NFL team to pay the taxes on the estate tax on that team.
And he's got 9 months to do it and pay right. File the return and pay the tax.
Well, Keith, should he have done a Nevada trust or what?
Well, all the smart people do. All the smart people do. I can say that. But Jake, people don't understand that. They don't even know that.
Yeah.
They don't know what kind of pressure there's. Okay, how many family farms are out there out in West Texas?
Farming's a big one.
How about the Mississippi Delta up there around Greenwood, Greenville, Cleveland, Mississippi? huge farms. The Louisiana Delta, the Arkansas Delta, huge. Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska. How many of those family farms they find out way too late? That's why it was so beneficial for the exclusion amount to be put up to 25 million, because in today's prices, land prices, the dirt alone is several thousands of dollars per acre, and we're not talking about 100 acres here and 100 acres there, and the shock. But here's something people don't understand. When I first got into the business, the exclusion amount was $640,000. $640,000. Now I look old, but I'm not 100 years old. Okay, that's not that far back in time. But people saw the effect of so many people having to be hit with this death tax, and the shock, the poor straits that people found themselves in. Because like I said, you got 9 months to file the return and pay the taxes. Okay. How many forced sales of farms, how many forced sales of businesses had to occur? And what's king? Cash. You got cash, you're buying stuff at pennies on the dollar simply because they're so desperate to sell it, because they got to raise the money to pay the taxes. Okay.
Yep.
Well,
yep.
The policy planners, the people who we elect to go to our state houses and our Congress, we tried to get them to say, folks, that does not benefit anybody but the government. We need a system where we can plan and we can continue businesses that pay sales tax, property tax, provide jobs so people can pay income taxes. That's the long-term security for our government, not a one fell swoop. Let me take everything you got, because when you take everything you got, you don't get it from those people anymore. Okay. So they listened. And so the exclusion went from 640,000 to, like I said, right now it's at 25.5 million. Well, that only affects the upper crust. Everybody else, you file the returns, you get the exclusion that the law allows you. Well, you find out you pay no taxes. Now, you may still have to pay some state death taxes, but for the largest part, you don't pay the federal taxes. But that's not what that blue party wants. The blue party wants to see that you, Mr. Plumbing Contractor, Mr. Electrical Contractor, and Mr. Architect that's built up a nice firm, or Mr. Engineer who's built up a nice engineering firm. They want to see you put out of business.
What we need is deregulation more than anything, and to stop spending money. I remember I can think back of looking at some getting into the real estate business. I was trying to get creative, figure out what clients I could find. And I saw an empty shopping center somewhere in like Texarkana. And so I looked up who the owner was, and I found that. And then I kind of contacted them, reached out to them. They said, "Oh, well, I rent this out to the U.S. Army." And it's like, it was an entire center, lots of square footage that was usable. I mean, it's in downtown, but it's empty. It's not being used. It's government money, taxpayer money, renting out a space that's empty. There's lots of stuff like that across the country that is just a waste of money, and they want to tax us just for every little thing. They want to say, well, Trump's tax cuts are hurting the GDP. They're hurting us being able to pay our debt. And I'm like, well, then stop spending the money.
Yeah.
Well, Jake, let's talk about that. There's two elements. Every time I see an article about, I've got the solution. Well, they still want to raise taxes. They'll throw in a little spending cuts, here and there. But here's the problem. I'll say that Congress does not have the political will to do what it takes to fix what's wrong, what is fundamentally wrong with our economy right now.
Yeah,
Jake,
So-
I have no idea what you make. Okay. I have no idea what you and your wife bring into the household. But I guarantee you this, you've got about 3 months of spending more than you take in, and that's about it. Am I right?
Yeah.
Well, why the reality that we each have to face, me, you, JT, all of our listeners, all of our viewers, we can't operate like the government. Why is the government allowed to just simply, send 200 more million over there to Ukraine, send 80 million to, this other country. I mean, in many cases, we're sending money to countries that hate our guts and want to see us destroyed.
Yeah.
Where is the political will to say that's stupid?
Stupid.
Why do we keep doing it?
Yep. Yeah, we'll go do a callback to earlier when I said your first option when you got a cash flow issue is to renegotiate with your lender. Well, the second is to spend less money, and that's what we just can't seem to do. And what's funny is the nomenclature for naming these bills is this whatever it is, but Spending Reduction Act or whatever. Well, they'll cut spending by $50 million over here, but in that same bill, they're increasing spending by $100 million on something else totally unrelated that you'd have no idea was in that bill just based on how it's basically marketed to the public.
Well, Jake,
So I mean, you're right. We can't get in. We need somebody to not care about whose toes they step on. And here's the deal, Keith. To get back to how do we fix this for the American people? We talked about 50 basis points. It isn't cutting. It's not getting to the kitchen table. Couldn't agree more on that. Unfortunately, what's going to have to get done at this point, someone's going to have to go in there and do some really hard stuff that's going to be difficult. We need short-term pain for long-term gain with our economic policy. We're going to have to go in there, and we're going to have to sit, instead of tiptoeing around and trying not to tick off our constituents so we can get reelected, we're going to have to go in there, do some hard stuff, get this fixed, and so we can finally move on past it. But you're right, Keith. We need somebody that has the stomach to go do it, and that's just a hard platform to run on, but it's just the truth.
Well, and I hate to say it, but the majority of Republicans, the majority of the Red Party, they're just Democrat lights.
Yeah,
because they'll sign a spending bill just as quick as the Democrats will.
That's the one thing they can all agree on.
We cut spending. No, you didn't cut spending. Instead of increasing the budget by 10%, you only increased it by 9%, but you still increased it.
Right. Yep.
And they want to tell us, I mean, how stupid do you think we are? Well, here's what I'm going to say, Jake. We're tired of being stupid. We're not stupid anymore. We are not going to accept the status quo in this country anymore. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think the conservatives in the Republican Party have one chance to get it right, and it's this time. Yeah. And if they don't, the Republican Party will become irrelevant, because those who have for years and years tried to give them the benefit of the doubt that they will represent sound economic policies, sound fiscal policies, sound foreign policy, sound national security policies, and they keep getting screwed. And so what they're going to do is they're just not going to vote at all.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen, because they're going to say, look, I know I'm not voting for the blue party, but guess what? You have sold me up the river so many times. I'm not voting for your party either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
for sure.
That's my prediction.
That's a whole different podcast.
We're at a tipping point for sure, Keith. I agree with you.
Well, and to me, the economics is the easiest to analyze. The economics is the easiest for people sitting there at their kitchen table to make sense of.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when it just go back to let's just name them real quick before we cut off tonight. Shoes, blue jeans for you kids, trying to buy a Sunday dress for your little girl, trying to put gas in your vehicles so you can go to work in the morning, come home at night. Okay, let's say you try to be real frugal. You're going to try to fix your own vehicle if something goes wrong with it. All right, parts are 50% more than they were 4 years ago. Okay, so you just get the gas that it takes. You got less money to pay, okay, there you go. Utility bills. What happened? How do utility bills compare now to 4 years ago?
Sure.
This is what tells the American people, to me, what's his name? The Democratic advisor. It's the economy, stupid. Well, it's always the economy, because when people are sitting there with their ears open, their eyes open, they see what's going on, and they hear you lying to them, they're not buying it anymore. It's how do you expect me to believe what my eyes are telling me, what my pocketbook is telling me? I've got so much gas money a week, and where it used to take me the whole week, I'm out of gas by Thursday. I've still got to try to take my kids to soccer practice, to football practice, to dance lessons. That's what the American family is feeling, and they're sick of it. They're sick of politicians who can't make fundamental decisions that make any sense at all.
Yep, no doubt. And I think that's something everybody can take in mind as they go, whether decide if they're going to vote or who they're going to vote for this year. This is a crucial time, and this is a chance. I hope that our nation can kind of band together and hopefully get some change from what we got right now.
Hey, Jake, look at this one. T-shirt needs to say, "I ain't stupid."
Stupid.
I ain't stupid. Hey, I'm all for it. Let's go make some money. Let's sell T-shirts.
Well, let's get some nobody's business merch going.
I ain't stupid. Oh my goodness. Well, Jake, look, we've had a blast. It's, as always, you're such a smart guy. People love listening to what you have to say. They know you got good sense, make good sense when it comes to economics and finances. And so it's always good to have you as a guest. And like we try to do, we're going to give you the last word. Send us off, Jake.
Well, hey, I appreciate you guys having me on. Once again, it's always a good time to chop it up with you guys. I'll try to end with something positive, optimistic. We still serve a God that goes before us, and the most important things in our life are already secured in our salvation. So you see a lot of negative stuff going around, and there's definitely some challenging things that we got to deal with and got to address. But, ultimately, we're here for a short time. We want to do the things we can, the best we can to impact people's lives. But, we're still very blessed as a country and as a nation and as people. And so just try to do the next right thing and love people. And I think that can go a long way no matter what happens.
Amen, brother.
Amen, Jake. I tell you, one thing about our Nobody's Business podcast, we try to say we're a general interest show, and Lord have mercy, the stuff we have covered. We've covered people who have great stories to tell about their lives, the things they've done in their life and accomplishments. And one night we had 2 military wives on talking about resources and trying to help, the spouses of military, both onshore and those that have had to go off on deployment. I mean, that was a show. Like I said, JT and I, we do commercials real estate 101 every now and then. We got a guy that comes
102,
on.
103.
Yeah. We got a guy that comes on. I mean, the guy is brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And I mean, he knows his stuff, and it's a young earth. He's a big proponent of the young earth, according to the Bible. And oh my gosh, his resources, his research is just unbelievable. It's one of the most controversial shows we have. And I mean, JT, what are some other things we? Oh, a historic water ground corn mill back in Mississippi, built in the 1790s.
See how excited he got about that? He is a
Jake,
history nut.
Listen, we cover so many different things, and you're part of what we think makes our show great, is because people love to hear what you've got to say, and you're so respected in how much sense you make, and so we're just so appreciative of the fact that the variety that we're allowed to bring to our listeners and viewers, and you've been a good contributor, Jake, and we really appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Keith. I do what I can with what I have to work with, brother.
All right. Well, Jake, look, man, I hate to run, but it's been great. We don't want to keep our listeners and our viewers up too late, but it's just been a great show with you, Jake. Thank you so much for joining us, and just go ahead and plan on it. Give us a couple of months, and we're going to have you back on. We'll see. We'll see what kind of economic situation we're in then, and we'll get your opinion on things.
Sounds great, guys. Appreciate you very much.
See you
Talk to you soon.
See you in the morning, bright and early, brother.
Let's do it.
All right. Have a good night. Thank y'all.
See you guys.
Good night.